Okay, let's go back to our top story now on those climate change talks in Doha. Earlier, we spoke to the Chief Climate Commissioner, Tim Flannery. He says he's confident most countries will sign up to a new deal.
I think that people now recognise the need for action. Here we've got 90 countries covering 93% of world's economic activity now with climate action plans. And we need to bring the political process into alignment with that. So, the Qatar meeting is just one of a series which will happen out through to 2020 that will get us to that point. They're increasingly, interestingly, less political and more bureaucratic, which is, I guess, the way it needs to be when you're getting down to nailing down the details.
Are you expecting to see some movement from China and the United States?
I'm uncertain about that. It would be nice, but I suspect that while there may be some small movements, it'll take a bit longer to get full alignment there, political alignment there.
Tim Flannery, now those talks begin today, but neither Australia's Climate Change Minister nor the Leader of the Greens will be there. Instead, the government will be represented by the Parliamentary Secretary for Climate Change, Mark Dreyfus. Now, it's the first time in several years that a minister has been unable to attend one of those key climate change conferences. The opposition spokesman for climate change is Greg Hunt, and he joins us now from Parliament House. Greg Hunt, good morning.
Good morning, Michael.
The Australian government's position on this new Kyoto Protocol is well known. So why should a minister attend this summit?
Well, I think the situation is very clear that this is a concession of failure from Greg Combate. We, in fact, have not been arguing that he should attend. We have said that it is a recognition that nothing significant is set, sadly, to come out of this conference. And what we see is in the last fortnight alone, the White House on at least 3 occasions has categorically ruled out a carbon tax. So the world is moving away from a carbon tax, and there is very little, sadly, that is likely to come out of the Doha conference.
It's not just carbon tax, as you well know, Greg Hunt. We're talking about signing up to a new protocol to reduce those emission levels by 2020. Is the coalition still committed to the goal of cutting those emission levels by 5% of 2000 levels by 2020?
Yes, we are, uncategorically. So our commitment is to our targets. Our disagreement is on the electricity tax. And the reason, which is very important, is because it doesn't work. We have an almost unique situation where we have a mining tax which doesn't raise revenue and a carbon tax which doesn't reduce emissions. It's a perfect combination of failure. People who want to reduce emissions, and I am deeply in that group of people, would be amazed and surprised to discover that the carbon tax, whilst driving up electricity prices, doesn't reduce emissions, and that's its double failure. Electricity up, emissions up as well.
In a global sense, we had that World Bank report last week forecasting a rise of 4% in temperatures. The targets agreed to already would cap temperature rises at only 2%. So given that, and the report from the World Bank contained some fairly catastrophic warnings about the consequences of the rise in global temperatures, should those emission cuts be deepened?
Well, we've actually given bipartisan support, and we have done this for well over 2.5 years now, towards a conditional change in targets, but it's got to be on the basis of what the rest of the world does. So our 5% is unconditional. Other steps depend upon the progress. The real way forward, and here I want to be very constructive, is to bring together in a group of 4, China and India, the United States and Europe. That is the heart of any solution, because they are the 4 largest sources of emissions. And if you can have China and the United States accompanied by India and Europe together, then we can make real progress. And that's something which we want to support and sponsor. And I think that that is the heart of any global deal, beginning with that relationship. And that's our constructive proposal at this moment.
So you're quite confident when you say that a safely re-elected Barack Obama now won't again take on the challenge of deeper emission cuts, be it through a cap-and-trade system or whatever in the United States, because there's a lot of suggestions he'll do otherwise.
Well, with great respect, on 3 occasions in the last fortnight, the White House, including the President himself, has categorically ruled out a carbon tax. The President said no, and a day after the White House had said it, then the President had said it, the White House chief spokesperson, Jay Carney, said, and I quote, "We would never propose a carbon tax." So that was what they said, not just before the election, but most significantly after the election. And that was both a statement of good faith with the electorate as well as an economic and emissions policy that they can do things directly, not through an electricity tax.
OK, let's come back home to political strategies, I suppose, tactics in this last sitting week of federal parliament. It's been a particularly, I think everybody would agree, ugly year in federal politics. Your colleague Julie Bishop is promising to go after the Prime Minister today on the slush fund scandal. Greg Hunt, just tell our viewers, what exactly has the Prime Minister done wrong here?
Well, this is about transparency, whether or not the Prime Minister was accurate with the Parliament in everything which was said in the previous sitting weeks. It's simply about being open and honest and honourable and decent, and whether or not everything which has been asked has been answered truthfully.
The Prime Minister held that Ask Questions Till You Drop media conference just a couple of months ago. She insists that she answers every question and also insists categorically that she's done absolutely nothing wrong. Where is the smoking gun here?
Well, if the Prime Minister has nothing of which she is ashamed, nothing to hide, then there should be no fear of answering any and all questions. That's a very simple proposition. The other thing that we'll be doing this week, because I think the Prime Minister needs to have no fear if she has nothing to hide, the other thing is to set in place, through a private member's bill, which we hope the government will adopt, standards for union behaviour, whether it's through the AWU or the Health Services Union, which has seen the money of the lowest paid workers ripped out of their hands and frittered away, standards for the conduct and probity and behaviour of union leaders which are comparable with the rest of society. So we will ask questions, obviously, about the Prime Minister's truthfulness in previous sitting weeks of Parliament, but we will also put in place a very constructive approach to having standards to protect the money of the lowest paid workers in Australia.
Bruce Wilson, the Prime Minister's former boyfriend, of course, who was involved in setting up this slush fund as well, insisted yesterday that Julie Gillard has done nothing wrong. So, and you're in that last answer suggesting that essentially Julie Gillard has been telling lies. That's what it comes down to in shorthand.
Well, this is in some senses, as somebody said, a battle of the bagmen, where you've got two different figures from a union slush fund, to use the Prime Minister's own terms, where there is no question, nobody is denying that there was a serious misappropriation of funds, two different stories, but then you have very senior lawyers who were partnered lawyers in the same firm as the Prime Minister, who are also raising questions. And I don't think there's any doubt about the probity of some of the critical legal figures involved here.
What do you think about the probity of people like Ralph Blewett?
Well, I think that anybody involved in the previous misappropriation of funds, whether it is Mr Wilson or others, has to be viewed against those facts. If they are now, however, coming clean and telling all of the truth, then I think that's an important step forward.
We shall see how this day unfolds. Greg Hunt in Canberra, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thanks, Michael.